Folks, thanks a lot for the 80,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. But we're not stopping here. Let's push it, folks, to 100,000 subscribers. So give that support to the channel and subscribe and hit that like button down below to reach our goal of 153 likes. And now let's go for it. In the opening of the story, an angel recounts that one day she heard from a person that she should learn more about humans. And this leaves her very insecure because she doesn't even know how to greet them properly. However, above the insecurity, tremendous curiosity leads the angel to the heart of one of the cities of men, where she believes she will live fantastic experiences. Meanwhile, leaving his shift at the fancy restaurant, Tokumitsu is exhausted due to the long shift he just finished. On his way home, he encounters a kitten he had adopted as a child, but since he couldn't keep it, a cat-loving neighbor ended up taking the animal. It seems too late to think about it, but currently, he could take care of this kitten after all, as it has been a month since he started high school and moved out on his own. His apartment is not the epitome of tidiness, but one day he will put everything in order. At this moment, all he wants is not to feel so alone all the time. Until suddenly, a feather of angelic wing invades his house through the window. The next day, the alarm clock wakes Tokumitsu, and his body feels so heavy that he's sure he caught a cold. During breakfast, he notices that the window slept open, although he always closes it every night, but soon he realizes the reason for all this: an unknown girl sleeping on his balcony. The young man panics and ends up spilling his milk on her, who, after saying good morning to the homeowner as if she had been living there for years, decides to change her wet clothes. Meanwhile, Tokumitsu wonders if this person might be an otaku cosplayer who practices parkour in her spare time, or if this could be some new internet prank, so he closes all the curtains to prevent the cameras from filming the apartment. In the meantime, the girl asks for some borrowed clothes, and Tokumitsu rummages through his drawers like crazy in search of a shirt. After finding the only clean blouse, he apologizes for it not being anything more refined, but it's the girl who apologizes for having used the boy's balcony without permission, as she had nowhere else to sleep. Then she introduces herself as Tawa, while he says his name is Tokumitsu Shintaro. Then the girl uses the boy's first name Shintaro to express her happiness at having met a person with such a pure heart, and that this can only be the work of God. With this, the boy begins to appreciate the politeness and beauty of the stranger, who would love to thank all of Shintaro's family members. However, he tells her that he lives alone, and Tawa is impressed that he lives alone in this mansion with so many windows. Facing this, Shintaro has to explain that this room is his entire house, not the entire building. With so many things scattered around, Tawa thought the apartment was a storage room, and this disconnected thought of the girl makes the homeowner think there's something wrong with her. Besides, he questions why she was sleeping on the balcony, and without answering the question, the girl remembers that she needs to repay the hospitality somehow, so she asks the boy to tell her without fear what she can give in return. As she was too close and insisting that she will do everything in her power, Shintaro loses his temper and says that there's nothing he wants, so Tawa laments and promises to at least cook something for the host, but there are no ingredients in the house because the guide only eats frozen food with Coca-Cola. Since that's the case, the girl decides to contribute with some cleaning, but as she rushes to the balcony, she ends up tripping over a pile of very suspicious magazines. Fortunately, she didn't see what happened because she was busy separating a cat fight to fulfill the verse, "Love your neighbor as yourself." After that, Shintaro puts some band-aids on the girl's scratched fingers and tells her to chill, because these cats sometimes fight but live rubbing against each other on the neighborhood rooftops. Seeing the purity of the girl, Shintaro understands that she might have reasons to run away from home, but reminds her that it's dangerous for a girl to sleep outdoors, so she needs to consider going back home. However, Tawa explains that she lives in heaven, God's abode, and that she is an angel. Shintaro finds it amusing to hear what he just heard, but soon he realizes that the girl is serious, so he is taken aback while Tawa tells him that she came down to earth by God's order and represents the angels on a mission to learn about humans. In the midst of this speech, Shintaro really saw that she was serious, but that doesn't mean he believes it, because in his mind, clearly Tawa escaped from some asylum or is one of those pretty, made-up girls who keep pushing some generic computer course. Finally, the strange girl asks to spend a few days at the boy's house, but as the alarm clock alerted that there's half an hour left for work, Shintaro rushes to get her out, at least promising to accompany her to the bus stop. After all the confusion, Shintaro takes a deep breath and believes he made the best decision. In the late afternoon, the boy was exhausted because of the worsening cold, and so the boss let him leave work early. On his way home, he wonders if Tawa really went back home, certain that he would never see her again, until she passes by Shintaro in the company of a weird old man who invited her to go to a hotel. Faced with the situation, he grabs Tawa by the wrist and pulls her away, but when it's time to lecture the angel about not trusting strangers, the boy falls flat on the ground and faints. Sometime later, Shintaro wakes up in his house and Tawa was so worried by his side that she even shed tears of relief upon hearing from the boy that he's better. Shintaro looks around and realizes that the girl had spent all this time taking care of him, and speaking of which, she offers him milk and shiro porridge made with the leftover bread as she didn't find rice in the house. Shintaro is happy to eat something he's never eaten before, but at the same time feels embarrassed when Tawa insists on feeding him. In the end, he gives in and feels good to be eating something so delicious made by someone who cared so much to take care of him. After relishing every second of this unique moment, Shintaro resumes his motherly sermon, which he stopped giving in the street, warning Tawa not to trust strangers because there are many bad people in the world. The angel tries to justify her action in following that man but ends up not finding the right words, so Shintaro breaks the silence by offering her his home to stay for a few days since Tawa really has nowhere else to go. With the good news, the girl hugs Shintaro tightly, who knows that this girl is a bit crazy and absent-minded but still a good girl. At least he thinks so. Next, the homeowner comments that it must have been difficult to carry him there, but Tawa replies that it was the easiest thing in the world, considering she can fly. So as the boy makes that same incredulous face again, this time she spreads her angelic wings so that there is no doubt left about who she really is, and Shintaro is enchanted by the beauty of that unique scene. However, as he wakes up the next day, the young man is certain that it was just a dream, until the angel wakes up next to him and throws all his certainty down the drain again. Shintaro asks what she's doing in his bed, but as the girl reminds him it's the only bed in the apartment. Seeing that he has indeed taken an angel to raise, Shintaro sees her dress slowly slipping off her shoulder, so he hurries to tell her to change clothes to go buy coffee on the street. Arriving at the corner store, he's eyeing some rice to buy, while Tawa shares a steamed bun that comes as a bonus dish for those who collect some stickers from the packaging. With excitement, the angel ends up exposing her wings outside, so Shintaro needs to put her back on track to avoid causing chaos inside the grocery store. Upon returning home, she apologizes for the untimely excitement and explains that she learned to keep her wings inside while on Earth because she read the Guide to Earth Life for Good Kids. Interested in the subject, the human asks what angels actually do in life, so Tawa explains that they convey God's will to people and take care of souls, so they don't get lost between heaven and earth. Shintaro thinks that's a tough job because there are plenty of people in this world, while Tawa concludes by saying that bringing happiness to humans is also an angelic service. However, when the guy asks what angels do to generate this happiness, Tawa realizes she hasn't found out yet, but she presumes that God sent her to find out. Soon, Tawa takes a bite of the steamed bun she brought and promises to eat it every day she can. But Shintaro knows that buying it every day at the neighborhood corner store will drain the money his parents give him every month, so he decides he'll have to start cooking from now on. Therefore, he invites Tawa to buy the ingredients as well as the things she needs for everyday life, like a toothbrush, and once again the angel lets her wings out and shows that she's still going to be a handful on the street. Before they leave, Tawa puts her hand on Shintaro's forehead to see if the fever has improved, and once again he can't control his embarrassment, hastily saying that it was probably just exhaustion fever. As they arrive at the mall, the angel believes it's actually a palace and runs ahead out of pure excitement. Shintaro follows behind the new guest and tries to keep her close to buy the things she needs, and the girl offers to float the shopping basket in case it gets too heavy, considering her wings have to stay out for that. After refusing the offer, obviously, Shintaro puts some chopsticks in the basket, while Tawa seems interested in a kitten mug she found, but since the homeowner already has enough cups, she's too embarrassed to ask. Around them, people are enchanted by Tawa's princess-like appearance, so Shintaro decides to go buy some clothes to attract less attention. Upon entering the store, the boy is relieved to have money to buy a blouse or two, since he saved up from the work he's been doing. So he insists that Tawa take a look around and try on all the models she finds most interesting. A saleswoman offers a new collection to the angel, and she gets excited picking out the pieces she wants to try. When Tawa enters the fitting room, the saleswoman comments that Shintaro's girlfriend is very beautiful, but he makes sure to explain that it's not what she's thinking. In the midst of this, as she changes, Tawa reflects that Shintaro took her in even though he doesn't know her deeper, so she thinks of something to repay all that kindness and goodness, since she said earlier that bringing happiness is her function. Thus, she steps out of the fitting room with one of the outfits, takes the boy's hand, and promises to make him happy, making everyone around think it's a marriage proposal. On their way out of the store, Shintaro is relieved that he didn't feel so embarrassed about this public declaration until Tawa asks him what he thought of her new outfit. Inside, he was saying how beautiful she looked, but on the outside, he could only say that it suited her. Then they buy the food and return home. Upon arrival, Shintaro is tired and assumes that the angel must be too, especially since today is Sunday and the mall was crowded, but Tawa replies that she had a lot of fun because Shintaro was by her side. Moreover, Kava finds among the purchases the kitten mug she wanted so much, and with that, they both become embarrassed at the same time in the face of this moment of affection, and Shintaro thinks to himself that he also had a lot of fun with this mysterious angel. As night falls, Shintaro shares the bed with Tawa again and remembers that he shouldn't have bought another bed as well. 2 days before reaching this moment, the innocent Tawa arrived on Earth and was enchanted by the lights scattered throughout the city. She sees a train just below her flight and goes after it to get to know this incredible machine up close and observe the people inside. Falling in love at first sight with the planet of humans, she goes to a place full of lights to reflect on how she should approach humans. Remembering the manual she read before traveling to Earth, a passage said that when an angel descends to Earth, they should remain in a position higher than that of humans and emit a powerful glow, introducing themselves in a grandiose manner. Alternatively, they can also hide their wings to avoid drawing attention and be more discreet. Since Talva wants to get to know humans up close, she chooses to hide her wings to avoid risks. Looking down at the bustling crowd below, she realizes how busy these people seem, and feeling tired, Talva quickly looks for a place to spend the night. Wandering through the city streets at night, she has no idea where she can rest, but since she doesn't have the option to go back home at this point, the angel needs to decide quickly. So seeing a building that she thought was a gigantic mansion, Talva approaches one of the floors and lies down on the balcony, thinking it's a vacant room and that she won't bother anyone with her presence. As she settles in, she wonders if this planet really has a place for her, but she intends to reconsider this thought only after resting for a bit. At least she has the feeling she will meet someone wonderful. Then we see the angel telling Shintaro how she ended up sleeping on his balcony. Shintaro is happy that she found a place to stay, and in turn, the angel is happy to have landed right in the room of her new friend whom she already likes so much. This moment happened shortly before the end of the first episode, where they were having dinner after returning from shopping, and Tawa prepared an incredible feast for dinner. Shintaro was loving being pampered, but this time he refuses to be fed, so he enjoys the food, especially a potato he hadn't tried before and loved, while asking where Tawa learned to cook like this. She explains that she also learned from the Guide to Life on Earth for Good Children, and the boy realizes that this book really must have everything. Excited about the meal, he drifts off thinking about fresh rice and succulent stew, bidding farewell to his days of frozen food and welcoming his new life alongside Tawa. At this moment, Shintaro remembers that Tawa promised to make him happy, its kind, beautiful angel, and an excellent cook. Lost in thought about the girl, Shintaro takes a break from eating, and Tawa asks if he didn't like it, but in reality, he was thinking about what he could do to repay all this kindness from the angel. Tawa thinks that being able to sleep there is enough, but since he mentioned help, she asks him to explain after dinner how to use the bathroom. So Shintaro teaches her that to take a bath, she must close the curtain to avoid wetting the basin and other things outside. Then she has to turn a knob to get hot water and another to adjust the temperature, but she must always remember to fill the tub first if she wants to use it, and also use the stopper to close the drain and keep the water inside. After the lesson on how to use the bathtub, Shintaro is happy to help, but the fact that such a girl is taking a bath there makes him very nervous, so he wakes up to life and goes to watch TV instead of sitting at the bathroom door. He turns on the television and tries to watch anything, but his imagination keeps taking him back to Tawa's bath. So he tries to punish himself with several self-right hooks, but soon discovers that he won't be able to fight against this emotional turmoil he got into. Still, without giving up, he turns off the TV and decides to study for tomorrow's English test, and this time he manages to focus for a good while until he feels the need to go to the bathroom. Distracted, he opens the door and realizes he had forgotten that the bathroom was still occupied, so there was the girl undressed in front of him. He closes the door in embarrassment and apologizes for not remembering that she was in there, while cursing the all-in-one Japanese bathrooms that combine bathtub with toilet. Tawa says she can close the curtain and wait for him to use the toilet, but the surprise takes away his desire to use the bathroom. Sometime later, he finally manages to use the bathtub and reflects that when you live alone, you don't have to worry if there's someone on the other side of the door, so he invaded the bathroom by instinct earlier. But Tawa also doesn't seem to worry much about these things because soon she's in there again offering to wash the boy's back, driving him crazy. Moreover, there's only one bed and the two sleep close to each other, and Shintaro can't sleep because of it. For this reason, he decides that the priority is to buy another bed tomorrow. When morning comes, the boy hadn't managed to sleep a wink, but since it was not even 6 in the morning yet, he decides to go to the bathroom and try to get some rest. However, once again, Tawa was stuck inside the bathroom, this time changing clothes, and Shintaro doesn't know where to hide his face after another blunder of this level. Because of this, the boy's sleep disappears altogether because he can only think about the nonsense of seeing her in the bathroom twice and how it could happen again. He thinks about establishing rules to avoid this. First, he thinks about leaving the bathroom door open when no one is using it. Tawa comes in to brush her teeth and comes face to face with Shintaro, turning on the churros machine. Despite that, not everything was just secondhand embarrassment, and Shintaro's third day of life with an angel continued to be blessed with a lovely breakfast, even though poor Shintaro was dead tired. Anyway, he fills his stomach with satisfaction and thanks his roommate for the treat, and when the Good Morning Mofu show starts on TV, Shintaro knows he needs to go to school. Tawa didn't know he was studying, so he explains that he's in his first year of high school. Hence, she promises to get ready now to leave together. Shintaro says she doesn't have to go to school with him because people would find it odd, but Tawa believes she can't make the young man happy if she's not always close to him. Shintaro insists it won't work, so the angel asks him to skip class. But he says seriously that his student's duty is to study, and this time the girl gives up on insisting. Soon, the homeowner leaves some money for her just in case and asks Tawa to watch TV and relax until he returns in the evening. On the way to school, Shintaro feels a little sorry for Tawa, but there really was no way to take her along. Besides, he didn't even sleep last night and feels like he's going to vomit from being so full. Surprisingly, his friend Shuchi slaps him on the back, and the boy complains that he could have let everything out in that play, but his friend has no idea what he's talking about. At that moment, Sumyuji arrives scolding Shuchi for being rude and blames him for Shintaro looking like he got hit by a train. Shuchi analyzes the poor boy's pale face and asks if he's possessed, and Shintaro indeed considers himself possessed by an angel. Anyway, he tells the truth that he can't sleep, and Sumyuji gets worried, especially since her friend lives alone. Shuchi thinks she's showing a bit too much concern. The girl gets embarrassed and says she only cares about her friend, so Shuchi asks her to show that affection to him as he's a good boy. Shintaro laughs at his childhood friends and says they look more like a comedy couple, so Tsunevi tells him never to repeat that nonsense again, leaving Shuchi offended by her exaggerated reaction. Meanwhile, Tawa is struggling with the blanket as she tries to hang it out to dry and still manages to keep the entire house incredibly clean, but she can't help but think about Shintaro, how happy he was to see him eating so much at breakfast, and she wishes he would come back soon. By the way, she doesn't know what he's going to eat for lunch, since he said he'll only be back in the evening, so Tawa imagines him starving on the floor like a homeless person and panics. Back at school, indeed, Shintaro will only have juice for lunch, but because he filled himself up at breakfast and can't even handle another olive. Suyuji is worried about her friend's diet because he can't cook and only eats bread for every meal, and that's why Shintaro almost lets slip that Tawa is making food for him, but manages to shut his mouth before saying her name and quickly adds that every day he eats well at the restaurant where he works. Still, Sumyuji knows he doesn't have work every day, so she offers to make lunch for a friend. Shintaro notices the well-made food that the girl prepared and compliments her talent, and the girl shyly says that making an extra lunch is no trouble at all. Shuchi asks if there's some of that grub for him too, but the girl snaps that starting from the third lunchbox, it starts to become a hassle. Shintaro finds the unusual conversation of the two amusing, but soon panics when he sees Toa flying out of the cafeteria window. He tries to hide the angel at all costs and tells her to go to the rooftop, that he rushes up pretending he forgot about an important appointment. Shuchi imagines he's gone to meet some girl, so Tsumivi teaches her friend a lesson for saying what he shouldn't. Seeing an angel flying around the school, a group of boys starts to think they've been playing too many video games, and when Shintaro is climbing the stairs to find Tawa, an unknown blonde notices his presence. Upon finding the angel, he remembers asking her not to come and comments on her exposed wings, so he starts to imagine news reports all over Japan confirming that angels really exist. Tawa apologizes and explains that she was just worried about what her friend would eat this afternoon, so she leaves the food on the ground and turns to leave. But Shintaro feels bad for speaking to her like that and calls his friend to eat with him, leaving the girl extremely happy. Soon they thank the heavens for the meal and get to work, and Shintaro praises the food while reflecting that Tawa probably hasn't been discovered, otherwise it would have definitely caused a massive uproar. Next, he notices that she made the potato he loved again last night, and Tawa replies that she wants to learn more about the things he likes so she can make more food. Shintaro asks her not to overdo it with these banquets, and while the two laugh together, Shintaro thinks that maybe he really was possessed by an angel, but that doesn't seem so bad after all. The next day, when Shintaro returns from school, Tawa greets him happily, while the boy apologizes for the lunchbox incident. On the other hand, the angel reminds him not to go flying around, so the two end up making amends right there. Shintaro notices that Tawa washed his clothes, even though she didn't know how to use the washing machine. As always, the girl had learned by reading the Good Children's Guide to Life on Earth. He becomes increasingly impressed with this so-called guide, until he sees that the girl washes underwear too. Since he was a kid, only his family members wash his underwear, so he's embarrassed. But to avoid an awkward atmosphere, the homeowner tries to keep a natural pose. Suddenly, he sees a bear sewn onto one of the underwear, and Tawa explains that she covered the hole with it, so Shintaro didn't know where to hide his face. Soon, because of everything the girl has been doing for him in this house, he asks to at least wash his own underwear, but Tawa thinks he didn't like the little bear, so she asks if he prefers rabbits instead. Shintaro tells her to forget about it and just leave the underwear with him. So from that day on, washing underwear in the sink became a routine for the guy. When night falls, Sunyuji can't stand pretending anymore that she didn't want to ask about that girl, but she was afraid of seeing crazy since in her mind that girl was flying. She tries to convince herself that she was just seeing things because people can't fly. Maybe seeing Shintaro with another girl has affected Sumuji, and she doesn't even know if she'll be able to make his lunchboxes after all. It's all consuming her so much that her mother had to check if she didn't drown in the bathroom from spending so much time in there. The next day, Shintaro refuses the lunch made by Tawa because he doesn't know how to explain it at school. With this, Tawa thinks the guy now hates her, especially since last night he insisted on sleeping alone on the floor and he never lets her go to school with him. So to calm things down, he accepts the lunch and informs that he will work until 9 tonight. The angel offers to go along, but Shintaro refuses and forces a smile expressing how lucky he is to come home knowing he'll have a great dinner, and that's enough to make Tawa really happy. On the way to school, Shintaro feels bad for avoiding the girl, but he's actually happy. He just can't fulfill all her wishes. Hours later, Shuchi catches Shintaro off guard by inviting him to lunch together, and Sumugi sees this as an opportunity to ask the boy if she can make his lunch. But since he already had lunch all ready and packed, he invents that he saved a fainting lady on the street and got food as a thank you. When he opens the lunchbox, there's a heart with his name written on it, and he tries to devour the food to pretend nothing happened. But it's too late. Sumugi is sure another girl prepared that lunch for him. Shuchi takes advantage of the girl's distraction to grab an omelette, but she doesn't let the insolence slide. On leaving school, Shintaro is exhausted even without knowing the reason, and he can't stand making senseless excuses anymore. He thinks he could introduce Tawa and try not to reveal that she's an angel, but the problem isn't even that. He doesn't want anyone to know he's living with a girl. Suddenly, a humble old woman who is a fortune teller approaches the young man saying he entered a phase of intense problems with girls, and to ward off this evil spirit, she's willing to sell these protections that cost 10,000 yen each. But just for the young man, she'll do 3 for 30,000. Dodging the spiritual scam he almost fell for, he recognizes that he is indeed having this issue with girls, while at the same time refusing to see Tawa as some sort of problem. As soon as he arrives at the fancy restaurant, the employee apologizes for leaving early on Saturday, but the boss is nice and happy for the guy's improvement. By the way, he comments that Izumi, the newly hired girl, will be on duty today and asks Shintaro to be nice to the newcomer. Shintaro is curious to know who this girl is after all, and right when he opens the first door, he finds out that the girl is apparently a fan of cherries. But as he spent more time than he should analyzing this situation, Izumi greets the guy and leaves a mark on his face to never be forgotten. During a shift, another employee asks what happened to the kid's face, but he brushes it off. Right after that, Izumi hands him a cold cloth to put on his face, and upon hearing the colleague's apology, she admits she shouldn't have locked the door after all. Then she introduces herself as Izumi Noel, and Shintaro has the brilliant idea to joke that she was born on Christmas because of her name, but to his surprise, that really is the reason for her name. Finally, Izumi asks him never to touch on the subject from earlier again and leaves, and even without being able to say a word, Shintaro is happy to know he won't be reported for harassment. Still, in the hustle and bustle of the service, even though the two haven't talked anymore due to the usual rush of being a waiter, the guy is struggling not to see Izumi in those cherry-printed underwear, so he bangs his head against the wall to rid his mind of this evil, and on top of that, he imagines Tawa getting mad at all this perversion. Speaking of Tawa, he still needs to explain where these lunchboxes are coming from, but so far he hasn't thought of anything. At least the cool boss lets Shintaro and Izumi go and offers a parfait to each, which were left in the fridge. The guy seems nervous with the girl's presence, so she asks if she should leave, but Shintaro replies that he actually feels kind of useless today. Izumi says he did his job perfectly, and even if she wasn't talking about the job, he is surprised to have been praised by this tough girl. As soon as they find the parfaits, Shintaro is unlucky that they are cherry-flavored, which instantly reminds him of an earlier scene, so he tries to pretend he's okay. However, it's Izumi herself who is red as a cherry despite claiming she doesn't care about what happened. However, the situation seems to spiral out of control as the two pretend like nothing's happening, and for some reason, the room's cooling seems to have reached a level that caused a snowstorm inside. So Shintaro notices the girl trembling from the cold, but as he approaches her, Izumi Noel confesses that she's a Yuki Anna. Suddenly, the cold begins to spread throughout the restaurant, bothering the customers until one of them asks the waitress to turn up the air temperature. Meanwhile, Shintaro isn't quite surprised by his new colleague's assertion. After all, he's living with an actual angel. But out of nowhere, she tries to backtrack on her statement, saying she was being silly and that the room's cooling is just broken. However, as she gets more nervous, a storm intensifies. To calm the nerves of the Yuki Anno, Shintaro says he doesn't mind who she is, so Izumi relaxes a bit. However, outside, the boss and the other waitress are wondering if the air conditioning malfunctioned, so Shintaro and Izumi decide to change as quickly as possible to leave the restaurant. After doing so, they run away as if their lives depended on it. And once they're far enough from fancy restaurant, Izumi proudly displays the parfaits she managed to bring even in the midst of all the confusion, and that's why they both burst into laughter. Meanwhile, the boss notices that the temperature has returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Tawa is sweating at fighting fight, getting genuinely tired and loving these crazy human games more and more. The angel got so addicted to this game that she didn't even realize the time passing, and seeing it was past 9, she wonders what could have happened to Shintaro. In the meantime, Tsumiyuji is going crazy thinking about her classmate's lunchbox, trying to unravel this mystery as if she were Sherlock Holmes of emotional dependency. To avoid losing it completely, the girl decides to have an ice cream on the street to clear her head. Nearby, Shintaro is trying to strike up a conversation with Izumi, but the girl seems seriously troubled about something. He mentions being surprised that they both attend the same school, but nothing cheers the girl up. Soon she questions whether Shintaro really believes what she said earlier about being a Yuki Anno, and calmly the boy reaffirms that he believes every word she said, without stressing Izumi out further. After all, he reflects, demons surely exist in a world of angels, so it became easier to accept the truth. Next, Izumi asks her colleague to keep something she's about to say just between them, that reveals that her family has had Yuki Annas for generations, perhaps due to a genetic issue. Just like Izumi, her mother and grandmother also carried this gene, so when they got angry, sad, or embarrassed, a snowstorm would surround them. Despite her younger sister and the rest of the family controlling their emotions well, Izumi always struggled to keep calm, so she always isolated herself out of fear of causing a blizzard when losing her cool. Over time, Izumi stopped going to school and stayed alone all the time, but when she started high school, she decided to change her life and start interacting again. When she was alone at home, Izumi's routine was reading manga and watching anime, so she started working to have contact with other people. Nevertheless, she's losing control because someone saw her changing clothes, so maybe her place is being stuck inside the house, and in the end, she's a lost cause. Then Shintaro acknowledges his colleague's effort to always serve customers with a smile on her face, because even though most people want to change, few take action to do so. For this reason, Shintaro thinks Izumi is incredible, far from being a lost cause. Upon hearing this declaration, Izumi sheds a few tears, and this makes the boy think he destabilized her again. But these are tears of relief, so to speak. Izumi had never told anyone outside the family that she was a Yuki Anno, and she's happy to have been accepted. Therefore, even without knowing exactly how to start a friendship, she asks to be friends with Shintaro, and he accepts without hesitation, even though she's a Yuki Anno. Thus, Izumi asks to be called Noel. Finally, Shintaro asks if it's true that Yuki Annas melt and disappear if exposed, but Noel laughs and says no. At that moment, a feather from one wing falls near them, and when they look up, Tawa had just arrived to see how her friend is doing. However, the angel and the Yuki Anno clash instantly. As if that weren't enough, Tsumiyuji appears last and realizes she wasn't crazy to see a girl flying in the sky. Amidst this confusion, Tokumitsu Shintaro, who was just an ordinary 16-year-old guy working and studying, suddenly realizes that his life is far from normal as it has always been. In the midst of the confusion, one girl stared at the other, not understanding a thing of what they were seeing, until all three started expressing their feelings at the same time to Shintaro, who, in turn, can't process so much information and starts asking Tsumiyuji what she's doing there. The girl answers that she just happened to pass by until she remembers she's in sports clothes and regrets finding her beloved in that attire. With that said, Shintaro tries to be clever and asks if they can pretend no one saw anything and go back home, but that's simply impossible, so he's going to have to tell the truth. At the same time, Noel is enchanted to see a real angel before her eyes, and all she wants is to touch that skin that looks so soft. On the other hand, Tsumiyuji is a bit more reserved and questions if the girl is really an angel. Shortly after mustering up the courage, Tawa confesses that she's an angel who came to Earth to learn from humans. With this, Noel becomes even more excited, but Tsumiyuji doesn't seem as happy with this discovery. Given the circumstances, Shintaro sits with everyone and explains what's really going on and that he hid Tawa to avoid confusion. Tsumiyuji agrees never to tell anyone, also because no one would believe her if she did. Next, she asks Tawa why she chose Shintaro, and the angel explains that it was by chance because she was just looking for a place to sleep. Sumyuji comments with a sour expression that Shintaro is too nice, but then she demonstrates that she both hates and loves his demeanor at the same time. Then she remembers the bento from earlier and realizes that Shintaro lied about it being made by a lady. Besides the angel, the other girl is Izumi Noel from Class 3, so Sumyuji asks what she's doing with Shintaro at this hour, as she's known as the Ice Queen because she never talks to anyone. Pushed against the wall, Noel starts losing her cool and threatens to make it snow, so Shintaro hurries to explain that they both work at the same place and left together. With this answer, Sumyuji silently thinks she should look for a job at the same restaurant. Adding more fuel to the confusion, Noel asks if the other two are just friends of Shintaro's, and he answers yes. With the girl's strange reaction, Shintaro asks if Izumi is okay, but she once again insists on being called Noel. Feeling sidelined, Sumyuji wonders why he calls Noel and Tawa by their first names but not her. After that, things calm down and Shintaro suggests it's time to leave, until Noel gathers courage and confesses to the girls that she's a Yuki Onna, making Shintaro spit out a piece of his soul. Soon after, Noel proves her point by bringing a light snowfall out of nowhere, and as she's so focused on it, she doesn't notice her skirt lifting, and when Shintaro tries to warn her, she gets even more upset because this boy also saw her changing earlier, and in that moment, the other two girls don't know where to hide their faces. However, Noel manages to regain control and explains that she gathered the courage to admit she's a Yuki Onna after seeing Tawa reveal her true identity. As the other two are Shintaro's friends, Noel trusts they won't tell her secret to anyone. Taking advantage of the confessional, Sumyuji reveals that she wet her bed until the 5th grade. Shintaro comments that the type of confession going on was of a different vibe, but the poor girl just wanted to share a secret like everyone else. After that, Tawa thanks for having met her new friends at that moment, and in response, Sumyuji introduces herself to the angel, while Noel wants to know if Tawa can adjust the size of her wings. As she grows her wings a bit, the girls approach to touch, and Shintaro silently realizes that everything turned out better than he imagined. Arriving home, the guy was completely exhausted, so Tawa goes to prepare something for him to eat. While mixing an egg in the bowl and lighting the stove, Tawa comments that the two girls she met today are wonderful people, and only a nice guy like Shintaro can attract people like them, and the young man feels embarrassed by such a compliment. The next day, a team of agents invades the apartment, claiming that the owner of the house is hiding an angel and Yuki Onna, so they send their team to search the place. In no time, Noel and a kappa that no one knows where she came from had been captured, and soon Tao was also in the hands of those men. Shintaro tries to save his friends, but he's also grabbed. As he's dragged away, Shintaro wakes up from the nightmare, and Tao is worried about the boy's screams. Arriving at school, the boy once again hadn't been able to sleep well, but soon Sumyuji approaches him with even worse dark circles, pretending it was nothing. In fact, she had even accepted well that angels and Yuki Onnas exist, but knowing that Shintaro lives with a girl is too much for her to handle. So she decides to take a step once and for all, asking if he's dating the angel or the demon. Shintaro justifies panic that he just met the two, and Sumyuji pretends to be calm, while inside her mind celebrates like crazy. Listening to the conversation, Shuchi approaches asking who this Tawa is, and Sumyuji lies that she's a distant relative of Shintaro's, and it's she who makes his lunchboxes every day. Shuchi is amazed at his friend's luck, so he asks if Tawa can make lunch for him too, but he leaves irritated as soon as Sumyuji tells him to get real. With that, Shintaro is glad to have someone to share a secret with, while Sumyuji loves the fact that it's between her and who she wants the most. After being alone again, Shintaro enjoyed the breeze of a peaceful day until he saw two pesky guys calling Noel to karaoke. The girl coldly ignores the duo, but her expression goes from hell to heaven upon noticing Shintaro's presence, and she reveals that she was waiting for the boy to arrive, just like she will every single day. By the way, she thinks it's a great idea for them to have a shared diary, but Shintaro remembers they have work after school, so he offers to accompany her there, but Noel wants to do this friend thing right, so she wants to go back with Shintaro on a day off. As she leaves out of the blue, Shintaro discovers why she claimed to be bad with friendships. As late afternoon sets in, Tawa takes a break from dinner preparations. The angel harbors such a deep desire to explore where Shintaro works that when a little kitten appears on the windowsill, Tawa decides to ask if she knows where Shintaro is working. Meanwhile, at the fancy restaurant, Shintaro is tasked with refilling the drink machines when Noel arrives all pumped up, and the boss calls the boy over for a chat. So he questions whether Shintaro and Noel are dating. Shintaro nearly chokes up his soul, but the boss makes it clear that employee relationships are allowed, especially since Noel herself requested to work on the same shifts as Shintaro next month. Nevertheless, the lad keeps insisting they're just friends until a coworker overhears and mentions attempting to befriend Noel, only to be threatened with a family curse for 15 generations in return. Anyway, the boss just wanted to check and then promptly asks the lad to help in the dining room when it gets busy. Speaking of which, a customer rings the bell for service, so the waiter heads to the corresponding table and finds Tawa and Tsumugi seated. Shintaro never imagined the angel knew where the restaurant was, so she explains that a kitten was showing her the way, and unfortunately, the little thing disappeared, but Tsumugi happened to be passing by and guided the rest of the way. Tsumugi pretends otherwise but only wanted to check out Shintaro's friendship with Noel. Finally, he takes the order for 2 drink sets and moves on to the next customer, while Tsumugi goes nuts seeing that masculine man in his work uniform. Meanwhile, an elderly lady seeks assistance, but interpreting it as a cry for help, Tawa goes to see what the woman needs. Then Tsumugi has to explain that attending to customers isn't her job, and she realizes that perhaps being an angel, Tawa is a bit scatterbrained, so someone has to clip her wings. Speaking of clipping wings, Tsumugi sees Noel and presumes that at least she and Shintaro won't have much contact during work hours until Noel rushes to inform the boy that the angel is there, causing Tsumugi instant distress. Seeing this, the boss calls Misuzumi for a moment and praises the energetic demeanor of the employee but asks her to tone it down a bit because this is a work environment. Right after that, she approaches Shintaro and asserts with her gothic voice that she can't be friends with him anymore. As she absorbs her own words, a blizzard forms around her body, and when Shintaro responds, understanding without breaking into tears, Noel glares even more and leaves, telling the boy never to speak to her again. In the meantime, Tawa was enjoying melon soda with cola, while Tsumugi was still reeling from the blow she received. Tawa wants to know what the next round will be, but her friend says she's already bloated, so they opt for something else to eat. Looking at the menu, Tawa thought she was still in heaven when she discovered the burger with cheese inside, but since she had prepared dinner today, she decides not to order. Upon hearing this, Tsumugi notes that besides being beautiful, Tawa is also a cook, which affects the girl a bit more. On the other hand, the innocent angel wants to know what gig means and is astounded to learn it means work, because according to her manual, it was side hustle. Tsumugi loses a bit of patience but answers Tawa's next question about whether Shintaro is a student or not given that he has a job. Then the friend explains that many students work part-time because their allowance isn't enough. Despite the great conversation, Tsumugi suddenly feels the urge to pee, so she leaves Tawa alone for a moment. Amidst the hustle of work, Shintaro worries the angel might do something, and indeed, Tawa takes advantage of her free time to attend to some customers, hopping from table to table until Shintaro grabs her and pulls her away. In a secluded spot, Tawa explains she just wanted to help finish the job quickly so Shintaro could go home, but he explains he's paid hourly, and as the angel didn't understand anything, he affirms that her helping won't change anything. So Tawa asks if Shintaro is forced to work because she's living with him, but the lad explains he's been working longer than that to gain experience before graduating, even though his parents send him an allowance. Still, Tawa thinks he does nothing while the boy works himself to death, but he makes it clear his life has improved a lot since meeting the angel, and she helps with everything at home. Then the girl calms down and informs Shintaro he'll come home to dinner ready. Spying on the conversation, the boss is enchanted by this beautiful love triangle until Noel arrives with another idea in mind. Now she wants to work on all shifts where Shintaro is far away. Later that night, Shintaro reflects that a lot has changed since Tawa started living with him, and among those changes, some stand out. For instance, the ready-made and industrialized rice he used to buy had been replaced because now they only ate rice cooked in the pot by that angel from paradise. However, Shintaro found it strange that the girl would leave the rice pot in front of the TV because as far as he knew, that kind of thing belonged in the kitchen. Tawa argues that leaving the pot in the kitchen takes up all the food preparation space and besides, all the outlets that are occupied. Facing this, Shintaro understands the reason and leaves the pot where it is, and speaking of which, he asks how angels make food up in heaven. The Paradise Offspring explain that there are trees that bear fruits, but instead of apples and oranges, like here on Earth, these trees yield lunchboxes of warm rice in the shape of a heart. The boy finds amazing how things work up there, and not having to get up to get more rice in the kitchen. He agrees with the angel that the best place for the pot is right there, next to the table. In another corner of the city, Tsumugi is thinking too much about this crazy story that has been happening in her life, even more because Shintaro asked for advice about Tawa after the incident in the park. At the time, he was thinking of taking Tawa for a walk, and since they go by bus and train, he wants to know if it's a good idea to buy a transportation card for her. Before giving the card, Tsumugi recommends first buying a ticket for Tawa to see how transportation works, but what she really wanted was for him to buy it for her, not for the angel. Either way, whether she wants it or not, she has always found Shintaro to be a different guy, more independent than most for his age, because when his parents went to work abroad, he decided to attend high school in Japan, living alone in an empty apartment belonging to his aunt. So the young man took a course to enter school and got a job to supplement his parents' allowance, which convinced them to let their son stay alone in Japan. Because of this, Sumyuji already loved the boy's aunt for providing the house that would make Shintaro meet her. So far so good, she could accept that Shintaro is more ahead than her. Probably, but the fact that the guy lives with an angel and works with a snow woman is a bit too much for her head. Soon to calm down, Sumyubi takes a sip of tea and acknowledges that this Toa person is nice just like Izumi and therefore would like to help them in any way possible. But the truth is, she gets uncomfortable when Shintaro talks about other girls around her, and so Sumyuji regrets not taking action before these two appeared in his life. Always in this life, the girl regrets the things she doesn't have the courage to do because she could have offered to make the lunchbox first for her suitor, or she could have been honest about her feelings even though no one could predict that the guy would suddenly start living with an angel. So in the end, Sumyuvi just feels too normal, with nothing special to offer since she's not an angel or a demon, so she asks her mother if she happens to be a descendant of yokai, because it would be good to have some standout characteristic for a change. However, her mother doesn't quite understand the reason for the fuss, but believes that being normal is also incredible. And that was the last thing her daughter wanted to hear. Deep down, what she wanted to hear was an I love you from Shintaro Tokumitsu. And without a doubt, the priority is to find a way to make that happen. In the meantime, the girl's youngest sibling comes downstairs hungry for snacks, but the mother doesn't want the kid munching before bed. So she tells him to take a bath to curb his hunger. On the topic, she remembers to show Sumyuji that she won a 2,000 yen voucher in a Senhora donut pastry shop draw, and since the promotion ends tomorrow, she should go with her friends as soon as possible. So despite the protests of the youngest, who also wanted to eat sweets, the eldest daughter can't stop thinking about the donut-filled meeting she wants to have alone with Shintaro, and so she hugs her mother tightly and thanks her for the opportunity of her life. The next day, the same trio as always is at school. This time, Sumyuji is at the limit of shame and rehearsing how she will invite the guy to enjoy the long-awaited donut. However, every time she comes across him during the day, wherever it may be, she gets so nervous that her speech falters and prevents the invitation from coming out. School time is already ending and still no word about the blessed donut, until Shuchi sees her with the donut coupon and takes it from her hand, inviting Shintaro to join them shamelessly. Normally, she would be upset with the guy, but today he was literally saving the day in the last minutes. However, a classmate reminds Shuchi that freshmen need to wash the club's balls today, so the guy is instantly downcast and he asks Shintaro to honor his name on this mission to send Hora Donut. Shintaro asks Sumyuji if it's cool for just the two of them to go, and she hides her ecstasy to calmly respond yes, while she feels proud for the first time to be friends with Shuchi since childhood. After the final school bell rings before going to the pastry shop, Shintaro asks to stop by the library first. Arriving there, he explains that he wanted to study about angels and yokais and find out if demons and kappas also exist. Sumyuvi is afraid the guy is trying to assemble a love quintet, but at the same time, she melts with this nerd side of her friend. Furthermore, he thanks the girl for keeping him company, and as she was helping him with the research, Shintaro says that Sumyuvi is helpful because of her manliness, a compliment she found bizarre to be given to a girl. So he gives an example like in the park when she revealed her most intimate secret to make Tawa and Noel more comfortable. But since that day, the girl blurted out to the group of friends that she wet the bed. She would rather everyone had forgotten about that nonsense. Sometime later, the two of them were peacefully reading their books in the library, and Shintaro is so sleepy that he doesn't understand anything he's seeing anymore. Sumyuvi comes face to face with a kappa and trembles, thinking they were just yokais who like cucumbers. As she was about to ask her friend about these creepy things she discovered in that book, he was already asleep on the table, which she found to be the cutest thing ever. Already in the fifth dream, Shintaro knew that his friend wet the bed. He just didn't imagine that the real secret Sumyuji kept was how much she was in love with him. After the boy's basic 1-hour nap, during that hour Sumyuvi spent staring at him, a heavy rain starts and threatens to ruin their plan to eat donuts, because even with umbrellas, they will end up wet by the time they reach the bakery due to the intensity of the rain. So Shintaro suggests that his friend buys the sweets and takes them home because if they delay it will be too close to dinner time. But the girl can't miss this unique opportunity, so Sumyuvi risks her life for the donuts with Shintaro and runs through the rain. Fascinated by the woman's love for the blessed donut, he eagerly follows behind. However, in the middle of the race to the shop, a kid speeds by in 5th gear and smacks his face on the ground next to them. as he ends up breaking the umbrella and will be late for his prep school if he has to go home first. Soon Yuvi gives her umbrella to the little boy so he won't miss his studies and shares what's left with Shintaro. The boy asks if she wants to turn back and buy some sweets at the convenience store since this problem happened, but the maiden insists on continuing the journey to Lady Donut, even with only one umbrella for the two of them. Even after finally mustering the courage to say what she desires, she thinks she went too far and quickly retracts to suggest they better buy another one. But Shintaro readily accepts the proposal to continue this way, so Tsumyuvi went happily ever after while that long-awaited date at the bakery lasted. The next day, leaving school, Shintaro notices that he wasn't assigned to duty today, just like Noel wasn't, which means that this would be the day they should walk home together, as agreed. The problem with these days is that he never knows what to say in the frenetic conversations he has with his friend, because Noel runs over one subject after another and the poor guy can't keep up. That late afternoon, after incessantly talking about a protagonist from an isekai who's crazy and has fire in her eyes to solve the messes of her adventure, she remembers to ask when they're going to buy a joint diary. At that moment, Shintaro decides to be honest and says that a diary for two doesn't really exist, and that this kind of thing is what girls usually do at the beginning of elementary school. Although the boy sounded a bit rude, Noel finds humor in this observation and understands what her friend meant. Meanwhile, back there, a group of students sees Noel Azumi from Class 3, the girl whom nobody ever sees talking to anyone, this time interacting with someone. A bit further ahead, Noel asks if eating on the way back from school is also something elementary school girls do, and when the boy says no, she rushes into the convenience store and buys an ice cream that cools the girl's tongue to the point where she can't even speak properly, and the fact that she struggles with it being a Yuki Onna makes both of them burst into laughter. After that, Noel comments that she thought about buying some different things for this moment, but decided on the ice cream to give a bigger sense of friendship as something that could be shared. In fact, she had been thinking about what to buy since last night. After all, today is a special day, the first day she leaves school with a friend, and that got her so excited that she could hardly sleep last night. Speaking of which, on the night she told Shintaro that she was a Yuki Onna, Noel also couldn't sleep because she had never been able to open up like that to anyone before about the most difficult subject in her life. Shintaro also felt restless when he heard this news and even had a strange dream that night involving a kappa. Noel laughs and thanks for it not being a dream, her revelation, and also thanks her friend for understanding this very important thing for the girls so well. At the end of the shared path, Shintaro turns left after bidding farewell to Noel, and the girl warns that the next time they walk home together, he will buy the ice cream. When she gets home, Noel takes out of her pocket the wrapper from the ice cream she shared with her friend as a memento, and eagerly awaits their next meeting. The next morning, Tao was folding the freshly washed clothes from the house and singing a song she spontaneously created on the spot. It was about Shintaro's favorite vegetables for dinner when suddenly a loud noise came from the balcony, as if something had fallen. Rushing there, Tao found Shu, a miniature version of herself who had failed in her landing and ended up precisely in Shintaro's apartment. Sometime later, when the owner of the house arrived, the angel explained everything and asked the little one to introduce herself to him. But the girl introduced herself like any self-respecting child would in the most rushed and grumpy manner possible, and then promptly called Tawa to come back home, exiting through the window. Unable to appear in public, Tawa kept closing the window while the little one kept opening it again and again until the older one convinced Shu to drink some milk, her favorite, to calm her nerves. After 2 sips, Shu glared at the rest of the people with a sour expression, while Shintaro was amazed by the existence of such tiny angels. It made sense, though, considering cupids are like babies. Then Tao asked Shu what she was doing there, as descending without permission wasn't allowed. But the little girl shouted that God allowed her descent precisely because Tao had been silent for too long and she was worried. Tao explained that she was studying human behavior and that a week away wasn't that long, but to the stubborn little one it seemed like an eternity. After all, they were like sisters, and that's why she could sense Tawa's presence and find her in that house. Unfortunately, Shu didn't think her friend would be staying in such a dump, especially with a human man, because they were nothing but perverted animals. Tawa tried to calm the situation again by explaining that the poor guy was kind, and then she invited Shu to eat the food she had made to see if her bad mood was just hunger. However, the little one freaked out even more when she saw that Tawa had the audacity to cook for this male specimen and even wash his clothes. Tawa tried to teach her that his name was Shintaro, but all the possessed girl could manage to repeat was cursed Shintaro every time she referred to him. Emitting a less than angelic energy, Shu decreed that the man was a big perverted lunatic, forcing the angel to be his servant, even though Shintaro tried to justify himself to Tawa at every moment that it wasn't like that. So all that was left for Shu was to execute the human. Tawa told her she couldn't speak like that, so Shu corrected her sentence to, "Shintaro will meet his maker." Seeing that her scolding attempt failed, Tawa offered milk to the little heavenly girl again, and she even drank it, but not without pulling Tawa out of the house again, at least to get out of that suffocating room. Tawa replied that Shintaro said it was dangerous to leave the house, so Shu asked how she was going to learn about humans if she never left the apartment. In the end, Shu believed that her friend was trapped in that place and didn't even know what she was doing, so she should go back to heaven now. But, as Tawa kept insisting, Shu turned her attention to the man, saying that he should rethink how he treats the angels since she is of a very high social status and leads a very different life than this one with the commoners. In response, Shintaro confessed that life with Tawa had its difficulties, which made the girl sad, but then he added that it was understandable, considering the enormous cultural differences. For instance, if one day he visited heaven, he would surely do strange things in the eyes of the angels. Despite all this, Shintaro felt grateful to know that Tawa always tried to please him and act correctly. Listening to every word, Tawa was enchanted by the boy's sensitivity, while Shu was almost bleeding from her eyes to see her beloved friend slipping through her fingers. Therefore, she didn't give up and accused all humans of being liars, and for sure this kid said everything just to please. However, Tawa replied that Shintaro was truly a good and kind person, and she believed that with all her heart. Shu argued that it was naive to believe that in just 1 week, but her friend reminded her that in this short time the boy had shown in every way that he really cared about her, even though she was a stranger at first. It was this kindness that calmed the fear Tawa felt when she came to Earth for the first time, despite being excited too. Knowing that someone cared for her made Tawa realize that she wasn't alone, and that was a reason for great happiness for her. Taking all this into account, the angel felt that she needed to repay this affection in some way, making her presence also bring that same happiness to him, and that's why she decided to stay. Ashamed, Shintaro felt he would never get used to a girl saying such things about him, while Shu saw that nothing worked and fled from the apartment, calling her friend an idiot for wanting to stay there. Shintaro and Tawa set out to find the little one, and the boy supposed that angels preferred to stay high up instead of near the ground, which Tawa confirmed, so they headed to the rooftop, where there was a rental garden that should still be open. Along the way, Tawa apologized for the things Shu said, but Shintaro knew she said those things because she cared about Tawa. A short time later, they reached the rooftop and found the little angel sitting in the garden, so Tawa apologized for only thinking about herself, while Shu only came because she was worried. The little one replied that her friend had done nothing wrong, so Tawa offered her a hug to stop her from crying. Shintaro watched the hug and interpreted the scene as a religious experience, and even though there was an angel there, children were still children, and he even found Shu cute now. However, while hugging Tawa, the little girl threw in Shintaro's face that he stole her, until her necklace started beeping, warning that it would send the child back home in a minute. With that, the girl started crying again, so she took her last chance to ask if Tawa really wasn't going back home with her. As Tawa stands firm in her decision, she keeps a small tally to always pray to ensure her friend doesn't suffer. As for Shintaro, she acknowledges that maybe he's not so bad since Tawa insists believing in her friend's judgment. But if he ever harms the angel, Shu will make sure he meets his maker, as she promised inside. However, Shu is sent back to paradise while ranting more against the poor guy. So Tawa takes the opportunity to take a look at the garden, as she had never been there to the ground floor. At the same time, she admits that Shu touched her with that talk about learning more about humans. Shintaro recognizes that things need to change and suggests that starting today after dinner, they'll go for a walk together every day. When Tawa gets used to it, she'll be able to go out in the morning while he's at school. That said, with her face all red, Tawa accepts the invitation and reinforces the kind image she has of him in her head. As promised, every day after dinner they took a walk around the city for Tawa to explore more of her knowledge, and Shintaro taught her how things work, like the color of the traffic light when crossing, always reminding her to look both ways. To his surprise, the supposed teacher makes a mistake and tries to cross with the light on, and it's the guardian angel herself who saves the human. One day, Shintaro comes in announcing he's home, and the angel comments that he always announces when he arrives, even though there's no one at home. As soon as Shintaro replies that it's force of habit, Tawa approaches to welcome him a bit closer than he's used to, and he couldn't help but feel that bittersweet atmosphere in the air. Speaking of which, they watch a TV show called Sweet Journey, and Shintaro reflects that his friend can now go out alone, and now the next step will be to teach her to take the bus and train. But thinking about it, he imagines the girl getting lost and being pursued by weird people, and just thinking about it terrifies the young man, so he decides as a true 16-year-old father that Tawa isn't ready to take public transportation. Meanwhile, on TV, the show features the sweet that sells the most in the candy store of the day, the shiny strawberry and muscat sandwich. Tawa drools over the sweet, and Shintaro remembers that they can get there by just passing through one station. Upon hearing this, Tawa is startled to discover that these stores shown on the program are real, because she heard that the people in the soap opera are just acting. But since these sandwiches exist, Shintaro invites her to eat one there, an invitation the girl accepts immediately. Anyway, on their way to the sweet shop, he gives Tawa a ticket to put in the station's turnstile, while she recalls seeing a train once on the day she arrived on Earth. Startled when the ticket was sucked into the machine, Shintaro explains that it comes out differently on the other side, and at the time of disembarkation, she thought the ticket should come out again for her to take home. Enchanted by the lively city, Tawa runs ahead, getting a small scolding from Shintaro, so she comes back and takes his hand for them to go together, completely changing his mood. Another mood that changed was Tawa's when she finally comes across the delicious, sweet sandwiches she saw on TV. While she ordered a mixed fruit sandwich and a strawberry and milkshake, Shintaro ordered a red and green apple sandwich and a honey shake. In the end, the boy was happy to have gone out with Tawa and to see her eat with such satisfaction. So the tour continues through the city until they reach an ecological park. Tawa sees a swan paddle boat and thinks it's real because she remembers a human play she saw called Swan Lake, a very beautiful love story. Shintaro explains what that is and invites the girl to try it, so soon they were pedaling together towards love, a love that Shintaro feels as he watches Tawa's beautiful legs spinning in the pedal motion. Suddenly, Tawa gets excited in the activity and accelerates the swan until it turns into a jet ski. Seeing the young people together, an elderly couple finds it the cutest thing in the world when two lovebirds enjoy the moment. Shintaro gets embarrassed and this time takes control of the pedal to fly away from there, while Tawa asks what lovebirds are and he pretends not to know. But as they leave the swan, the old couple's phrase sticks in the boy's head, realizing he's on a date. A little further ahead, Tawa sees a dango shop and pulls Shintaro to eat, but he lets go of her hand on impulse. Then he explains that holding hands is something only very close people do. At that moment, an irritated woman knocks Tawa to the ground as she changes course. Although the angel understands that the woman must be in a hurry, Shintaro apologizes to her because every time she's in danger on Earth, it's the fault of humans, who are a bunch of selfish people who only care about themselves, and Shintaro thinks maybe he's the same way. That said, Tawa teaches that it's easier to care for others when we care for ourselves, and at that moment, Shintaro deeply feels the happiness of having met this incredible person, but decides to cut the mood by inviting his friend to eat the dango she wanted so much. So they walk to the snack bar together, but without holding hands. After a whole day out, Shintaro and Tawa head back home while the angel gives thanks for the day and the delicious fruit sandwich. Speaking of which, they need to think about dinner, so the boy suggests they grab some takeout at the convenience store so Tawa won't have to cook so late. When they reach the building, the girl mentions she'll quickly prepare some hot tea. But as they arrive at the apartment door, there's a girl sitting there looking downcast. Shintaro goes to check out what's up until the woman stands up and hugs him tightly, and then Shintaro realizes it's Mary. Soon she's inside devouring the pork takeout they bought as if she hadn't eaten in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Shintaro reflects that the freeloader didn't even ask to grab some grub. Mary apologizes for not visiting her friend earlier as she's been busy, and Shintaro acknowledges that she takes her work very seriously. At that moment, the visitor starts choking and Tawa gives her something to drink. Meanwhile, the angel asks who Mary is, and Shintaro explains she's his aunt, his father's younger sister, who works as a manga artist. With that said, the girl suddenly screams out of nowhere, making her nephew think she's drunk, but she explains she's just really tired because she hasn't slept in 3 days. Tawa asks what a mangaka is, causing the artist to immediately shut down, until Shintaro grabs a manga as an example. Mary complains it's not her work, and the boy admits embarrassedly he doesn't have any of her publications. She complains her nephew should be the first in line to buy them, but he can't concentrate on reading knowing it was made by his aunt. With that said, Mary melodramatically tells the boy to forget she exists, but Shintaro can't do that, considering the girl ate his and Tawa's dinner. His aunt begs for forgiveness for doing so, claiming those sleepless and foodless nights have affected her ability to reason. As always, Shintaro takes it in stride, while the girl continues to complain she even had to wait for him to come home. Shintaro argues she could have bought something to eat while waiting, but by that time exhaustion and hunger had stolen the girl's brain. Besides, she'd been waiting for Shintaro to come home since 3 p.m. and couldn't call him because she left her phone at home to avoid being tracked by her boss. Anyway, it's now Shintaro's turn for his stomach to growl, and Tawa sees no other option but to head to the kitchen at this hour, but Mary offers them a cake she brought. After all, it's her birthday today. By the way, no one wished her a happy birthday all day, not even the boss, after she finished all the work that was pushed onto her. Therefore, Mary decided to buy her own cake and share it with Shintaro, and for that reason, she can't help but throw a fit, calling the boss a proofhead. So shortly after, Shintaro lights a candle for his aunt and sings happy birthday in improvised English. But the woman can't stop crying for a minute, so the boy turns on the light while Mary explains her emotions are on edge when she finishes a job. Tawa hands her a cloth to wipe her tears, and the woman returns the gesture, saying she loves Tawa embarrassingly. Speaking of which, Mary finally asks who the girl in the room is, and Shintaro thinks about how to justify a girl living there without the owner's permission, who is his aunt, let alone an angel. However, Tawa takes responsibility and says her name, expressing how grateful Shintaro feels for his aunt letting him stay in this apartment for now. The boy is afraid the angel will say she lives there, so he ends up abruptly interrupting Tawa's introduction and tries to communicate mentally with her not to reveal this fact. In the face of this, Mary gives a mischievous little laugh and asks if the girl there is the nephew's girlfriend. Shintaro tries to explain she's a classmate and they're having a meeting for the school festival committee. However, Mary notes that festivals only start in the fall, so Shintaro gets increasingly flustered with these flimsy excuses. Then she asks Tawa if the boy is popular at school, since she's his guardian and needs to know. Shintaro refutes this claim, so the manga artist complains to Tawa that her nephew is being mean when she changed his diapers when he was little. By the way, Shintaro was a darling when he was a baby, and Tawa is enchanted imagining the little boy. Changing the subject, the boy's aunt gives him a killer look and asks why the girl calls him by his first name. Shintaro lies that it's just a nickname and that everyone at school calls him that as a joke, piling more and more lies onto this snowball that his life has become alongside the angel. With tempers calmed, everyone finally shares the cake and talks more calmly, and Tawa announces she'll make some tea. Mary praises the girl for being so thoughtful, so she asks if she happens to be an angel, and it would be nice to have someone like that in the family. With that said, Shintaro nearly spontaneously combusts and tries to explain in every way possible that there's nothing between them. Mary gets discouraged by her nephew's attitude and goes to the bathroom, noticing there are 2 toothbrushes in there. Shintaro improvises and justifies that he likes to divide them between his front and back teeth, while he thinks his aunt is too sharp for someone who doesn't sleep. As she sits on the toilet, the woman feels the mental fog dissipating and the carbs flowing into her brain, returning her humanity. While washing her hands, she's surprised to see her nephew inviting a girl into the apartment and analyzing the situation. She pieces things together and seems to have had a major revelation. For this reason, she exits the bathroom shouting for the young man not to get involved with toxins and generalized carnal relations, and Shintaro stops Tawa from innocently repeating that phrase to ask what it means. Right after, the tea was on the table and Mary thanked everyone but offered to take Tawa home since it's late and her family will start worrying. Without knowing what excuse to give this time, Shintaro agrees and they all head out to take Tawa home. On the way, the angel asks what the hell she has to do, so the boy suggests she separates from them at some point, then flies back to the apartment without anyone seeing her, hiding until his aunt leaves. Mary asks what they're whispering about, and Shintaro makes up that it's about the festival. Changing the subject, she thinks it's better to explain to Tawa's parents why she arrived late, but the girl declines the help and says she'll stay there, quickly saying goodnight to the others and running off. Mary runs after her and informs her that Shintaro might be a bit shy, but deep down he's very kind, and that's why she would like the girl to continue being his friend. With that said, Tawa gets emotional and says goodbye, while the boy wonders how long his aunt will stay there. As soon as they return to the apartment, the angel observes the conversation between Shintaro and Mary, and the woman keeps secret what she talked to Tawa about the farewell. Bitter, he then asks his aunt to eat and leave, but she informs him she's not leaving tonight and even bought an overnight kit at the market. Shintaro raises his voice and insists his aunt leave, otherwise Tawa will end up sleeping on the balcony. But Mary refuses to go back home, as she'll have to work, and she can't give her best because her boss didn't wish her a happy birthday. Then she shouts that Kita is an idiot, making Shintaro remember that his aunt's editor is Squeamix. Therefore, Mary is talking about Kita Mitsuru, the genius known as Baron of Oil and legend of the heavy feudal lord. Mary is startled by the fanboy outburst from the young man and quickly becomes sad and comments that Kita doesn't care about her because she doesn't sell much. Shintaro tries to cheer the girl up by saying that maybe she's famous since they made an anime adaptation of her manga. Still, the woman is convinced that she's a burden to her boss, an example of what a manga artist shouldn't be doing. Because of this, she refuses to leave and orders the boy to get a blanket for her. Shintaro argues that the last train of the night hasn't passed yet, but Mary turns to declare her stay. Tawa signals that it's okay for her to stay on the balcony until someone rings the doorbell, and Mary shouts for Shintaro not to open the door. The boy ignores the tantrum and disobeys his aunt, allowing a monstrous being to invade the house looking for the lousy author hiding there. Mary despairs at the arrival of Kia Mitsuru, who knew her employee would be in the apartment she bought after becoming a little famous. Mary asks her boss not to call her a little famous, otherwise she'll cry, while Shintaro can't believe Keita has been a woman all this time. Mary explains that the boy there is her hidden son, but Shintaro tells the truth and says he's renting the apartment from his aunt. Embarrassed, Keita bows and apologizes at the same time, revealing that her last name is actually Mikuru, not Mitsuru. Then she says she wouldn't have locked Mary out if she had known she had a nephew to take care of, but Shintaro brushes it off and prefers his aunt not to show up there. Finally, Keita calls the employee by her name, causing her despair, promising to work like a convict to make up for today, but the boss just wishes her a happy birthday, surprising everyone. Keita even bought a cake and went to Mary's house, but it was empty, and she panicked. That's why she regrets fleeing from her busy schedule to give attention to this great employee. Hearing that, Mary can't contain herself and swoons, and Keita tells them to eat the cake quickly so Mary can get back to work. At the farewell, Shintaro tells Keita he's looking forward to the next Baron of Oil, and she replies that she'll ask the young man's opinion when she decides to make the sequel. On the way out, Mary jokes that the boss doesn't have time for that, and Keita retorts that she would if a certain manga artist did miss deadlines all the time. As soon as they get rid of the two, Shintaro takes a deep breath, while Tawa comes out of the balcony and comments that she was happy to see her friend with someone from the family for the first time, and it was cute to see him all awkward next to his aunt, making the boy even more embarrassed. Meanwhile, Mary suggests to the boss that she writes a script for a romantic comedy about a boy and a girl living in a studio apartment, but Keita doesn't like the idea much. Hey folks, if you're digging this anime and want to see more, drop a like down below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We need your support to hit 90,000 subscribers. Every subscription counts and helps us grow our community. Catch you in the next one.